Hey everybody, this is Brian.
And this is Josh.
Welcome to the podcast for Curiosity Continuum.
Curiosity Continuum is an industry-innovating, non-traditional company passionate about growing wisdom in the next generation.
We are the essential bridge between the analog and digital worlds by building collaborative communities that unleash the power of adaptive expertise and innovation needed to thrive in the 21st century.
We combine and mix essential elements needed to empower people to succeed in new ways, not possible outside of a creative, thoughtful, diverse community of fellow curious people.
Follow us on your favorite podcast app to receive notifications of new content. If you like what you hear and want to dive deeper, visit us at curiositycontinuum.com. Thanks for tuning in. Let's start the conversation. All right, so I'm never setting my microphone up like this ever again. I'm just going to tell you now. So, are we going to turn these into video at some point? We said we will. We got to hold ourselves to that.
Yeah, I think we will. I mean, we got to at some point.
Got to do it. In the meantime, if you can't see it, I've set up a different stand. I'm like, well, I'll set it on my desk. Now, you may think that I have this big, large piece of real estate for a desk. I really don't. And I thought, well, I don't want to set up the big stand. Maybe I'll just be clever and set up the desktop stand. No, folks. No, don't do that. Give yourself room to operate here. But that's not what we're talking about today. What we're talking about is kind of a riff on a riff. When we have so many choices of entertainment to watch. It used to be I still think about MASH. And MASH played a very specific role in my life growing up because first I ever learned about Korea was from MASH. That's really what it was. But it also has the distinction still of having the biggest farewell episode ever in the history of broadcast television is MASH. And huge turning out. And this was back in the early 80s. So it wasn't like it was that, just yesterday or something like that. It's because there weren't as many choices. There was a lot of people watching. And this was a very significant event because it was running for so long. Well, people ran up the conversation about it and people buzzed about it. So this episode's called The Need for Unified Social Contagion because it's harder to get larger groups to follow along on as many things. Josh, can you pick it up from here?
Yeah, I mean, I think the last time I experienced something like this, especially with a TV show, was probably Breaking Bad. And that wasn't that long ago, where people were saying, oh, did you watch this? You had to watch it in real time. And then when there was pauses in it because of season breaks or whatever, it actually paused and stopped. And I don't think that, in fact, I know that's not common today. It just doesn't happen because we don't have broadcast television much anymore. I mean, we have it, but everything is streaming. Everything is on demand when you want it. So I think to talk about this in a kind of objective way might be a really good thing, to kind of talk about how this changes the dynamic.
There was very much a known cadence in broadcast television where you had your spring season and your fall season, and then you had your reruns, right? So because obviously production's expensive, and you knew the new seasons, the spring season was going to happen on all stations, and here's your TV shows. When Josh mentions the skip in Breaking Bad, there's a generation that's young enough that doesn't remember that you didn't do that. It was called either on the air or off the air. There was not, we'll be back in 3 years because they sequenced the programming and such, right? So I think another thing that probably was it was our generation because I remember it, but our parents' age talked about it more was Who Shot JR?
Oh, Dallas, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now your mom, I know, because was a big soap opera fan, and yep. I'm guessing that she was all about trying to figure it out.
Dallas, Knots Landing, and Dynasty. She loved the 3 nighttime soap operas. And I remember where we weren't allowed to be out when my parents were watching these shows because they were too adult for us. So we had to go to bed at 7 o'clock. Or we had to stay in our room, more or less. More like it wasn't we had to go to bed. We just couldn't be out there.
Right.
And
here's what's funny is my mom called shows. She wasn't a soap opera fan anyway, but she called the pits. Now the pits was a large general term where anything that she thought it was either morally not good or not her cup of tea or something. Many things were considered the pits.
but she watched it anyway, and you couldn't.
Well,
Right?
she didn't watch it actually. She abstained from that. My
Okay.
mom was not a big TV watcher. If she did, she was always like ironing clothes or something. I'm like, Mom, you could just sit down. She's like, oh, I like to iron. I actually, she's probably one of the few people left that I know on this planet that actually likes ironing. Come to
Probably
think of
just
it.
likes the way the clothes look after it's ironed.
Well, true.
It's probably she
Um,
probably doesn't actually like to iron. She likes what it looks like.
I think she actually took in ironing as a side gig while she was in college back in the day.
Hey,
I'll have to
you just
ask her
gotta do
about
what you
that.
got to do.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so off track here. But when we talk about those things, even the people that didn't know the show, everybody knew they were talking about Who Shot JR,
Right.
right? It was so well known. And now, like with Breaking Bad, I actually watched Breaking Bad after the show was done. Okay, so somebody said this show was amazing, and I'm like, I never paid attention to it while it was on the air, and then I watched it all, and I really enjoyed the show. I thought it was super, super well written and well done by the production team and by the actors. But I had to catch up on that. It wasn't like I had the immediate social currency that was kind of binding people together. It's just become more fractured, or fractured more, I guess you'd say, these days.
I mean, for real. Like I remember watching. I'll just go back to Breaking Bad. I didn't really pick up Breaking Bad until about season 3, where everyone was kind of getting on board with it. So I watched because I think it went on Netflix or some streaming program like show, where I was able to like watch a whole bunch, and then I'm like, wow, this is really good. Let's pick this up. And my wife and I, we were like, yeah, let's watch this. So we picked it up, and we're like, oh, we're right here, like right where we were left off. And it was just getting to the point where it was lots of climactic breaks. And then when they would break, and they'd be like, oh, we'll be back next season, basically. And we didn't know when that was going to be because this was cable. It wasn't like back in the day with us where it was like 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks. We knew they were coming back. We just didn't know. And so I think that was part of the just reaction to it. But today we don't really have that. We do get it a little bit. Like Netflix is doing that a little bit when they break seasons up. They put like all episodes streaming, like half of them, and everyone binges it the first 2 days, and
Right.
you're just waiting, right? So you get a little bit of that. I think they're trying to recreate that kind of FOMO.
Yeah,
And
well, I mean,
not
they're going
only
back to a
Netflix.
release schedule.
Right, because it costs too much dang money to make these shows that are like epic,
Mm-hmm.
and you watch them on one day and you're done, and then like you're like, where's the next show? Well, they're
I felt that way with The Expanse. Now, The Expanse was a show I didn't realize there were like these big gaps in between because I had COVID when I watched it, and they actually published like the final episode like during my sickness. Funny as that sounds. So I like watched it all because I had nothing else to do and I couldn't leave the room, and then I finished the show. And I was like, well, isn't this time that I caught up on years of time and happened? So I could talk to you then, Josh, because I think you're the one that recommended it to me,
Yeah.
right? But that's like a one-on-one conversation. It's not a broad social currency anymore.
No, and I think that's where we're kind of at with it right now. I think they're trying to. I think the streaming services are trying to recapture that. They're trying to recapture that. Maybe even the last time they even came close was Stranger Things.
Yes.
I mean, and I think that's because it really captured like Brian and I's generation, which just happened to be at the right age to remember the stuff they're talking about, and
Mhm.
the way they cadence the episodes. Like the first season, they just threw it all out there. Second season, they waited quite a while. They threw it out there, but then they started breaking them up. Like you're going to get like half of it and half of it, and then half of it and half of it. And I think that's important. Like, I really feel it's important to have this break. We need time to digest this. It's not just throw it all at you. I mean, what do you feel about that, Brian?
I think it's good. I think we almost could put a comma here. Just kind of like a little bit of a shorter episode.
Yeah.
And the question would be, I was going to say, the horse may be out of the barn on this one. But then the question is like, what are you finding that you're talking about? That there's something that's not so galvanizing. You know, it's funny because Josh and I was never like the guy that watched a lot of sports or could quote the statistics on such a player. That was never me. So that still is a currency that some people go, oh, you like college ball, you like whatever. It's like, yeah, and they talk about the things. I'm like, I have no idea what they're talking about. So sports is something for me that is kind of like left me kind of in, I had to find other ways to talk to people, if that makes sense.
No, I think so. And I think that if you don't have that, because I'm not really a sports guy either, but what do you have other than politics, which is very galvanizing? Like, what do we have
Yes.
today just to talk about? We don't have that water cooler moment. And I think that may be where we should really think about how do we get back there.
Now I'm thirsty and I'm going to drink some more water. Let's put a comma here so I can get a drink. Until next time, this is Brian
And this is Josh.
for Curiosity Continuum.